All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us today here on this live chat, The Art of Informed Decisions. We're going to be covering the fundamentals of product analytics, the way you can implement it the right way in your organizations, and how they can help product leaders succeed into developing products that really solve user needs. I'm Simone. I'm the head of product at Xstream, where we help scale ups and corporates design, implement with software, and eventually scale digital products and AI solutions. Here with me, there's Matt from Mixpanel. Matt, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You work in Mixpanel.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a customer success architect at Mixpanel. What that means is I work with our customers of varying sizes, but across Europe and the Middle East, and helping them get the most out of their data. So implementing, connecting them up with different tools with data warehouses, and then helping them use Mixpanel to get insights about their users, their products, and hopefully help them learn from what they're collecting. So yeah.
That's perfect. Then you're the perfect guest. So I would say, yeah, let's dive right in. Uh, I want to start from the ground base. So I want to start by defining what product analytics really is, because I think that's kind of needed in our industry.
Mhm.
But before that, I want to share a story from our personal experience and how we approached and ended up on this subject. I come from an engineering background, so a few years ago, I would say, yeah, 3 4 years ago, I didn't know what product analytics really was. But when we ventured the first time into a product of our own, which is not something that we usually do, but we like to experiment with our own products, and we ventured in the B2B SaaS space. Yeah, we didn't know a lot about product analytics, as I told you, but yeah, we did know a bunch about lean methodology and yeah, the lean startup movement. And so we were really obsessed into getting validation and product market fit signals and getting some data. We started a good way. We started with a website, a very shitty prototype. The minimum we could demo. Yeah, that's true. Um, got a very little bit of marketing, and so if we got some traction, luckily enough we got some, and we started to onboard our users. And I think that's pretty much the usual way and the way it should go. But again, coming from a lean mindset, we were obsessed with understanding what the users wanted. We knew that we needed something to tell us, yeah, don't fall in love with your ideas, don't fall in love with what you think the features should be, don't fall in love too much of what the product should be, but try and listen, or better yet, observe what the users do. So we didn't know anything about product analytics, and the first thing we approached was qualitative analytics. So yeah, there's a lot of products you can do screen recordings with, and they are extremely powerful. So we got obsessed with that. Yeah, you know them, Mouseflow, Hotjar, those kind of products. And yeah, we really got obsessed. I think we spent many hours a day watching every user session, and yeah, that gained us a lot of insight and understanding of that target audience, and eventually made us able to improve the product. But in a matter of weeks, we understood that there was not a scalable way of doing that, for two reasons mainly. It really took us a massive amount of time, which is not wanted when you have your executives working on a new venture. But really, it was starting to get ineffective up to a certain point, because if you only get qualitative data, there's all sort of opinions that could rise from that, and it's difficult to drive decisions based merely on that information. So then we discovered quantitative product analytics, which today is all about. So I would let you define it. What is product analytics in mixed panel, especially?
Yeah, I think what you've said is essentially what product analytics is, which is measuring how your users are using your products. And obviously, you can do qualitative analysis, you can do surveys, and you can do interviews. And that's actually the background I came from before moving to Mixpanel. But it's kind of a bit more than that, because the qualitative feedback research is very much, in the moment, and it's very much defined on how you ask and where you ask and who you speak to. Whereas product analytics is just, what features are my users interacting with? How are they converting through from page view or hitting our landing page or downloading the app? What's stopping them from making a purchase? Where are they getting stuck? Now, Mixpanel helps you do this, because what we do is provide the tool that says, well, everybody should have access to this information if they want it and if they need it. So you can build your own reports, you can make your own hypotheses, you can answer your own questions. You don't need to know any querying language to query a data warehouse. You don't have to export everything to a CSV and run pivot tables. You can do all of it within the tool itself. So you've got the data flowing in, so you can understand those things. And then if you work in product, you can ask product questions. If you work in marketing, you can ask marketing questions. If you work in UX and UI, you can ask those sorts of questions. And then you can go in and build everything yourself. So you don't have to wait. You don't have to, as you said, kind of waste time. You go in, you do it. It's quick and easy to do that. So yeah, I think that's what it is. I guess it's also, measuring the right KPIs as well. So not just, oh, I have all of this data, I can build reports. It's actually, I have all of this data. It is connected to metrics. It's connected to KPIs. They are all important to me and my team and the business and the company, and then making your product better because of that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very good definition. That there are two things that you mentioned that sparked me. You used twice the word measuring, and I mean, in my view, that's really how I see a product like Mixpanel, and measuring analytics in general. Because I mean, I've been working in product for a few years now, and you can see that from organization culture to organization culture, there's a big difference in how digital products get perceived. And sometimes, too often, probably, they I mean, people have this feeling that they are like black boxes, that you can. I mean, the only thing you can do about is having opinions on them, and you don't really know what's happening inside. You formulate opinions and you hope for the best. So there's really this concept of black box, when in reality, you can measure the inner functionality and the inner working on it, and try to shift it in the direction that you really want to achieve. And you also mentioned marketing. So I would try to challenge you on this subject, because what we found also is that, I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can measure stuff, especially in today. I mean, everybody wants to be data driven, so there's a lot of ways you can measure stuff. And let's face it, one very particular popular tool that comes to mind immediately is Google Analytics. Is very widely used. I think there's like 80% over of market share. So it's really the first thing that pops up into mind. And that's also something that we tried. And there's also the ways, and you have the BI tool. You have, I mean, we are engineers. We can be rushed. Let's open the DB and just query it ourselves. Why do we need a solution for that? So my question would be, are they the same thing? And why should we have a dedicated solution? Which is, of course, the answer. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, sure. No, it's a good question. And I think, as everybody knows, GA is a great tool for its purpose. There's a reason they have such a large market share. One of them is they, gave it away for free, which is very nice. A company like Google can do that. But I think where Mixpanel sits is kind of saying you can do more than just what you can get with GA. With GA, it's very much page views. It's very much, connected with Google Ads and acquisition sources and things like that, which is great. But actually, what if you want to know more than that, which is not just, oh, these users have landed on my page and have converted, and this is where they came from. It's okay, but did they retain after that? What other features did they interact with? Where did they go within the product once they did that? Can you bucket all of your users into different segments and groups and understand how they're interacting with each other, how they're using different parts of the product? And even just, well, my user came onto my page and then converted, but then did they get value after that? That's definitely where we see our users getting more than just using, the GA page view data. And on the other side of that, you mentioned, yeah, you can run stuff out of the database and straight to, a visualization tool like Looker or Tableau or BI or whatever it might be. And you absolutely can. And one thing to make very clear here is that Mixpanel is neither a straight replacement for GA, and it's also not a replacement for something like Looker and Tableau and anything to do with that. I mentioned it before, but where Mixpanel sits is more, maybe you don't want to pay for all of your licenses for a BI tool, and maybe not everybody has the technical knowledge and understanding to use those sorts of tools and get the value out of them that you want. So actually what they can do is use a tool like Mixpanel, which we believe is easier to use than something like Tableau and Looker, and everybody can get value out of that. Now, I am not an overly technical person. I'm certainly more technical now than when I was when I started at Mixpanel, but I'm not an engineer, I'm not a data scientist. But I use Mixpanel all of the time to answer questions, and I teach people how to use it as part of my job. So what we're saying again is, take the resources that you have, which are engineers, data scientists, who, let's face it, are incredibly expensive and you're paying a lot of money for them, and let them still use the tools that they want and the tools that they need. But for teams like product teams, UX, UI, even sales teams, customer success teams, support teams, do they need access to your database to query and then pull the data into a BI tool? No. So what they can use is Mixpanel, where they can build it themselves and they can do all of that themselves, and it's easy to use and they can answer those questions. And ultimately, you then free up your time so you don't have somebody from a product team coming to an engineer and saying, please, can you pull me this data? Because that's not their job. They can run it themselves. So it frees up your time to kind of do everything else. So I guess Mixpanel kind of sits in the middle. So, do your massively complex stuff on your BI tools. That's great. And then, if you want the kind of more simple acquisition page view sort of thing within GA, that's fine. But then in the middle is getting more answers for everybody else. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean that aligns perfectly with my experience when we first came into this space. Yeah, I mean analytics for us meant, yeah, you track page views. I mean, let's track what users see on a web app. So there might be different features. Let's see when they hit one of them and how frequent they hit one of them. But really is like adapting a sort of marketing mindset where you want to have a funnel and you want to see, yeah, okay, I'm having this many page views, when there's really an iceberg of depth that you need to track to understand how your product is performing in the user problem space. So yeah, what we discovered is it's just a product meant for product people, which are yeah, it's definitely your target, and that makes a huge difference. So it's very easy for product people to use, so they don't need a setup, but it really drives the a culture. I'm gonna discuss that later on, but really drives a culture where you can share that knowledge and experience across the organization. I think, yeah, that's the main difference. We perceived it's a product meant to product people, aligns with the product management, yeah, good practices and best practices. On that, it's not enough for a product to be driving that kind of culture. You also need to do it in a certain way. So what have you seen to be a successful way of implementing a product analytics solution in an organization so that product leaders are empowered to take informed decisions? Because I guess that you need to do the extra step yourself, right?
Yeah, I think that's such a large part of what I do and what we do, and I do think it can be a tough thing to know where to start. I think is the main thing. Um, I'll be honest, you know, the temptation is, depending on the size of the team and the company and the organization you're working in, you know, do you just develop everything and just build everything and see what works? You know, you said before, like you can do that. What works and what doesn't. If you have the right tools and you're measuring the right things, then actually what you can say instead is, well, what are our users using? What are our customers doing? So where should we be investing our time and our resources? I'd say the most important thing with any of those things is just to say, you have to be able to measure the impact of what you're doing. So we are releasing features as a product team. How do we know as a team, and how do our leaders know whether this had the change that we wanted? As an example, we want to build a feature that improves the way or makes it easier for users to complete their registration and build their account on whatever it might be, for whatever sector that might be in. Well, okay, I'm working on a feature where we're making that more streamlined, we're making it easy. But what I see after that is, well, how do I know whether that's gone up, gone down, stayed the same, done nothing? So you have to be able to measure all of that and to say, you know, here's where we were before, here's where we are now, and has this, you know, made a good thing or done it well? There's obviously other things that you can build into that. So, you know, do you want to run this versus a control group? Do you want to go in and say, you know, we're going to A/B test certain features on certain groups of users? And then on the flip side of that, you can actually look at areas of the product that you have developed and that people like and that everyone enjoys, but nobody's using. So why should you keep that within your product when nobody's going to use it? This is actually something that we at Mixpanel did a couple of years ago, where we had quite a large feature of the product, but it was costing us quite a lot in resources to maintain and keep it running. And we just made a decision and said, look, we're just going to remove this because it costs too much. The return is not worth it. And people aren't using it in the same way that we expected. Therefore, we're going to remove them from our product. So for the leaders themselves and anybody within a product team, really, you need to be able to measure the change that you are making. But also, if you've got your analytics set up in the right way, you can actually look at what areas you want to improve and what things you want to build. And then, as I said, once you build them, has it gone well, has it not, and all of that stuff as well. And if you can do that, essentially you can, you know, the dream is to be able to almost draw a monetary value, like in dollars, euros, whatever it might be, to say, we made this change, it drove this much in return, or it saved us this much money. Isn't that great? And that's really all everyone's looking for. But
Yeah, I mean that resonates with me a lot. And yeah, because we made these kind of assumptions and reasonings, like, what's the monetary value of this feature? So is it really worth implementing it or not? And when we've done it, is it sustainable as a product increment? And it really much depends as well on the product maturity. I think there's a wide variety of use cases, and one that, I mean, is especially in my heart is for startups, or even in their products, within larger products. I mean, they are kind of a startups within the organization. And in those cases, I think the best practice would be to try and mirror what's considered good entrepreneurial approach towards your future. So what we found out to be extremely working is you formulate hypotheses. I mean, I don't know if you're acquainted, but there's an Italian guy used to be a Googler. It's called Andrea Savoia and Alberto Savoia, and he wrote this book about validation of ideas, which is, I mean, a huge deal in for startups. They mostly fail because they don't have a market to be with. But I think that applies as well to product features. So you should try and challenge yourself in a way that you set some expectations, you formulate hypotheses, you share across the, I mean, you don't need to share across the organization, but at least across your team, what's an expected value for that to be a success. And then you have to measure the impact of what you're building. And from there, either iterate again, because you need to collect more data, and or just pivot and decide, that's not the way we should do this, because our expectations are not met, and that's just not worth building. And I think much of it goes to the definition of the metrics, as you said before. You know, one of the really good practices that product leaders should have is picking a handful of metrics. What's the approach that you've seen on your customers on that topic? I mean, are they usually picking too many of them, or just a couple? What do you see in your experience on that?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and I think that I'd say broadly, people are measuring a lot, and everybody seems to have their own metrics and their own KPIs and their own OKRs, or whatever you want to say, and they don't often connect up as well as, it's written up in the textbooks, and best practices would dictate. I would say that if you're looking to start with kind of KPIs, metrics, whatever you want to do, the best thing to do would be to start and just say, what do we want to improve, or what we want to improve is our product's active usage. It's as simple as that. Like, as long as your product has active users, you will most likely be okay. We all use products every day where, on our phones, that you don't pay to be a member of, but your active usage is integral to the success of the business. So I would say that that's like the best place to start. And again, what I've seen when I work with customers is they often are trying to measure everything as a KPI when some things kind of aren't, and some things are, more interesting to know. And instead, you should think about, well, what do you really need to know in order to measure the engagement for your users? And I mentioned one of them earlier, which is, we're looking to streamline an onboarding flow. Well, how do you measure that? Because like an onboarding flow is someone completing a registration, but it's not really. It's actually someone completing a registration and then doing something that generates value for them, and then for you as a product owner, team, business, whatever it might be. So how are you measuring that? How are you understanding that? How are you getting the point of users coming, landing on your homepage or downloading your app to getting to value? Do you have everything in place for that? Can you measure where people are dropping off? Can you understand what's going with that? And you said there, well, how do you know what's good and what's not? Yeah, there's plenty of things that you can do and look at, like benchmarks and things as well. But ultimately, just start by measuring something, and then say, do you know what? It was this week, or that it was a certain percentage in this week and this month, and then next week, next month, next quarter, we're going to improve that. And then how are we going to do that? and those sorts of
Yeah,
things. So yeah,
let's make it practical as an exercise, because I think that would be beneficial to our users. So let's suppose I am a product manager, or product leader, just entering this topic. I mean, I've heard it before, but I never actually implemented. My organization has some kind of product culture, but I expect to have some friction trying to make it more data driven. I understand that it could be beneficial to my product roadmaps, because I get the feeling that sometimes we take decisions from gut. That actually happens very, very often. What would be your advice to a person like this that wants to innovate in his own company, and really wants to implement this kind of solution?
Yeah, and I think I kind of started talking about it, so we'll just kind of keep going through there. But it really does start with the questions that you have and what you want to know. If you've got the right people in your team and in your organization, if you go to them and say, well, what do you want to know about the product and what do you want to know about our users, they will give you a pretty good list of kind of what they want to know, from the very simple things of where are they coming from and how long do they spend using our products, down to, well, what acquisition sources convert best and what's keeping my users retained after, the third time they make a purchase, and those sorts of things. So it can be nice and simple, but it can be really complicated as well. When you have the list of those questions, then you can decide, well, actually, what data do we need to answer those questions? Because we're saying, all right, well, that example of we're measuring people registering, well, okay, we need data points across that entire journey to understand how they're going through that. Another thing as well is, I kind of did mention it before, but if you want to move on from kind of gut feeling to proper kind of informed decisions, I would recommend using something we use at Mixpanel, which is deciding what a focus metric is. So a focus metric should be the most important thing that you are kind of driving towards. It should be the thing that users do within your product that they can't do without it. So for a company like Uber, it's booking a taxi. For something like Netflix, it's watching content, whatever it might be. What are you providing to your customers through that? And then we want to be seeing how quickly we can get users to that point. So now we have our metric. We want to measure how we can get new users to that point, and then how often are they doing it, and how often are they doing other actions within our product. And really quickly, you can see that we're building things out into, we have our most important thing at the top, and then we have the other things that we're measuring underneath. But everything kind of drives up towards, that most important thing. The next part for deciding your focus metric, your most important KPI, is, yes, okay, we want users to be downloading content or making a booking or making a purchase, whatever. How frequently should they be doing that? And you need to realistically think about, well, how often should people be doing it? Yes, we'd love everyone to use all of our products daily or hourly, but that's just not the case. So should it be weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever? And then go from there. And that's your metric. So people making a purchase every week, people making a booking every month, whatever it might be. So you've already got like a good set of metrics within there, because essentially once you have that important thing, it then becomes time to reach that point, and then retention of users who are doing that as well. So it's definitely something that can be like standardized pretty quickly. And then from there, you iterate upon that. So you are constantly then measuring and then remeasuring and saying, okay, well, this is what we started with because we just wanted to start somewhere and start measuring something. But now we've learned more about our users, we've learned more about our customers, and now we are, kind of changing how we approach things as well, because we've started from something. It's tempting when you start with a process like this to think we have to capture everything, we have to measure absolutely everything because we kind of might need it later. I mean, you can, but unless you can move through that very, very quickly, are kind of going to be wasting time, because what you want to do is start learning about, how your products are being used. And you mentioned before about different sizes of organizations. For some organizations, you cannot afford to waste time, because if you don't start trying to find product market fit, then you're gonna kind of struggle as you go along. So you need these things kind of before you go. So yeah, it's definitely those things as well. And then if you've got those, you can start making decisions on what do we build, because we want to improve engagement, retention, those sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of probably, of course, implementation is very important. Tracking is very important. Sharing is very important. But really sitting down at the beginning of an iteration and, I mean, go to a whiteboard and just select and get a shared agreement on what's a focus metric. What, I mean, in lean analytics, this is called the one metric that matters. I mean, yeah, true story. I just come from a workshop with a customer of ours, and we were just sitting there with a whiteboard, and that was a very, very effective discussion, and one discussion that's very good to have at the beginning, because you want to get that shared agreement across all stakeholders. And in this case, it was product team, but also some of the business users. And you want a shared agreement. Yeah, we should focus on this metric, and then from there you can infer what the roadmap should be, because you know that you have that goal, and that goal is shared across the main participants in that iteration. I don't think, in my personal experience, that one metric is enough. I mean, I mean, I don't know if that's the case for other people, but I never managed to get it down to one metric. I always get some dashboards, some KPIs, definitely more than a handful that I track. But there's really one that I care the most about, and that's what lean analytics is all about. I mean, you shouldn't just have one, but one that you really cared about, and one that is commonly shared and agreed across your team. There is the other side of the coin, I would say, about the say this data-driven approach. Let's focus on one metric and we try to optimize that. And it's some kind of friction that I sometimes get in certain organizations, and it may not be explicit, but there's this counter argument. Yeah, of course, let's be data-driven, but data driven can only get you up to a certain point, because I'm an entrepreneur. I know what I'm doing. If I asked users what they want, they would say to me a faster horse. They wouldn't say to me I want a car. Yeah, that's the usual example. So there is this misconception that if you get data driven and if you really care about the metrics and about the product analytics, somehow you're fixing yourself up for local optima. Like, you can definitely improve on some metric. I mean, you can iterate as much as you want, and you're gonna improve on those metrics, but you're never gonna do the jump. You're never gonna hit a different area of your product that you might not have thought of. Is this kind of counter argument resonating with you? What do your customers say about that? What's your experience on this topic?
Yeah, and to be honest, I think that is true to some extent, but I think it does go back to, we've mentioned it a couple of times already, almost the stage that you're in terms of product maturity. Now, if you're a small company and you're just starting new, then as an entrepreneur who's starting something for themselves or with a small team, you probably know what you want to do. And as I mentioned before, what is the thing that you are offering that either nobody else is, or you're doing it better than others. You probably know what that is already. So what you want to do is optimize that process and drive users towards that process, doubling down on retaining users, whatever it might be. And that's probably where you're going to start. So it's actually a combination of both. So yes, you have a vision of where you want to go, but you still have to do the basics right, because the basics pay the bills. Really, that's as simple as it is. And then once you have a bit more breathing room, then it becomes, okay, well, what can we do that's maybe a bit different? Now, if you're more of an established product team business, and maybe it's like a new product feature within an established, product suite, then yeah, you have a little bit more kind of wiggle room. One of the great things, if you measure things like retention of users and users who are engaged, is actually you can then identify groups of users who you can say, we're going to do something new. So who should we be targeting towards this? Who should we be, introducing to this brand new feature? Probably the ones who are already engaged, who already get repeated value with our products, because, if it's not something they're going to use in the long term, then it's not too big of a deal because they're still getting value. But then they will also give you, the right level of feedback and engagement with that new thing. Now, again, it's still a balancing act between how much time and resources in terms of development, engineering, and quite literally, just revenue resources do you spend on those new things, because not every company can be like, Google or Amazon or whoever, who can launch loads of features every single year. And if nobody uses them, then, who cares? Because they've still got, hundreds of billions of dollars behind them. So it doesn't really matter. So yeah, I would say I've kind of seen both, where I work with companies where they're still in kind of startup mode, where they want to optimize things and learn very quickly and see what's working and what's not, and streamline their process. But then also, once they get a bit more mature, and again, once they've either got more funding or they've got an established user base, then you can start to say, okay, well, where is the market going? What are our competitors doing? What are we seeing that maybe we can get involved in as well? And now we have, as I've said, an established user base who we can, rely on. And again, it goes back to active usage as well. They will continue to be active while we develop new features and things that maybe we haven't done before. So yeah, as I said, I think both are true. I just think that it's everything, as always, goes hand in hand, because on the flip side, if you have a thing that your product does very well, but you don't change anything and you just continue to say, this is what we do and that's it, what's going to happen is a new product's going to come along that does what you do, but also does something else, and then they're going to take your customers. So yeah, it kind of works both ways, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're right. You need to have a mixture of both. I mean, I agree with. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it really much depends on how much you can afford to experiment beyond what you can control. And yeah, for Google and Microsoft and Amazon, you might have a product cemetery. The famous cemeteries where they just list all the products that failed. And for most startups, and even larger scale ups, the cemetery is the company itself. If they fail too often to launch something in a good way, they just fail with the whole company, and that's of course not nice to happen. But I do think you require a mixture of both for yet another reason, because looking at it from a mathematical way, yeah, that might be true that if you only go in a data-driven way, yes, you're optimizing on some metrics, so you might do iteration towards a certain goal, which is a local optimum, and that is true. So you need the creativity of product manager, product leader, or the entrepreneur itself, depending on the organization size, of course, to really create a disturbance in that optimization and see if you can reach optimization areas that simple iteration would not have been able to achieve. But the problem we've seen is that yes, you can do that, of course, and that's needed to really do the big jumps. But even if you do the big jumps, you still need a way to measure the impact. So you might have a disturbance and creativity on and gut feeling on the hypotheses and on the assumptions, but you need to have a rigorous system to measure the impact. Otherwise, it's all about opinions, and it's all about, yeah, you know, the famous problem of highest paid person opinions, that you just get one person say, yeah, I think this should work, and maybe they're right, but how would you know? So yes,
sure.
you do require that level of entrepreneurial mindset and creativity and challenging of the status quo, because you might get stuck in a local optimum. Maybe you're doing your funnel in a certain way, and yes, you've improved it, I don't know, we have 3 times in conversion over the last couple of months because you've done some iterations, but there would be a totally different way of doing that same stuff that brings you to 20 times the conversion rate. Yeah, astonishingly, but you still need a rigorous way to measure that impact. Otherwise, it's really just gut feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say we've moving from definitions to really the steps that you need to do to bring product analytics in your team. But I want to take this a step further. So you brought this into the table of your product team, and that's okay. You're using it for driving your roadmap, but you still might get some friction across the organization. And I think one big challenge, but also a big opportunity in especially larger organizations is to shift that product culture and the product analytics culture that might work in the inner circle across the wide organization that surrounds you. Any tip on how a product I know that's not an easy question, but on how a product manager could reach that level of widely spread culture across the organization?
I think, well, we mentioned it earlier, and we touched on it earlier about, the goal being able to say, here's the change that we made, and here's what we did, and here is the monetary value attached to that. But ultimately, I think it's more about, almost everyone within the organization having the same mindset of, well, what are we trying to do? We're trying to build a better product, make things better for our users, and we kind of understand that as well. It does go back to having the right KPIs and metrics, because I think one of the things that I find really useful, not just working on Mixpanel, but also when I work with companies who I try and help put this into place, is you said before about the number of boards that you have and things that you build. If I have like a good framework of my metrics and KPIs, then no matter who looks at a conversion number going up or a retention number going up or whatever, I can link that back to, well, this is why it's important, because it is driving all of these other things that are, we work on all the time, but maybe it's difficult to put a tangible number against it. Because one of the things that I think is difficult is, we've already mentioned, we as the product team are trying to make it easier for our users to be active on a weekly basis. Well, how does everybody in the organization wake up and say, how do I do that today? That's a hard thing to measure, right? But if I know that there's a product team or a product area that are focused on improving the onboarding experience, if I know that there's a team or an area that are working on kind of in-product experience, improving the UI, and if I know that, in my role in terms of customer success, I'm working on retention of users, or based on what my model is or whatever, then I know that's all kind of feeding in the same direction. And as well, it's just incredibly important to not just share wins, but also share learnings. And one of the things that we do very, very well at Mixpanel is that we kind of give people access to everything that they need and all the data that they need, and just say, do what you need to do, build what you need, go and have a look. But what that also means is, when our product team release a new feature, they attach it they attach in like a shipped post in Slack or an email. They say, here's the board that we're using to measure the impact of it. And then they can report back and say, it did what we thought it would, or maybe it didn't, but here's what we learned. And it's just a continuous loop of, we're making these changes, we're making these improvements. And I know what the product team are working towards because they have, set things out and then they measure everything and then you can put a number against it. And then I know where to go to kind of look into this as well and kind of find out for myself. So if you combine those things, not only am I informed up front about why we're making these changes, but then also I'm empowered to go in and say, well, is this doing this for the customers who I'm looking after, the people who I'm working with, and things like that. So it's a combination of those two things as well. And then the product team then become not just the people who are kind of building the product to make things better, but also, keeping the company going by keeping our users engaged and keeping our users coming back. And, that's kind of how it goes as well. So yeah, it kind of works in all those ways, I guess.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree. And yeah, let me share a story of what I consider to be a success story on this matter, because I really think it also comes to yeah, as you mentioned, sharing learnings and not just wins, so you get in a trusted space where, yeah, everybody's sharing really what's happening, and you have that sort of reliability. The reliability needs to, of course, happen at a personal level, but also what we found to be tremendously impacting, it needs to happen at a data level. um, it's very easy to get chaotic with the analytics that you're tracking, and it really makes a huge difference. Yeah, you could think of that as a UX, but for executives towards the product that you're managing, and it really makes a difference because if you're having very clear dashboards and very clear reporting, also in the way you're presenting them, it makes it so much easier for, yeah, the upper executives and upper management to understand the changes that you're making, and seeing the way that you see. So about the success story, we were managing this product, I think, yeah, last year, and we did have an issue with activation. So yeah, we didn't really spend that much time for activation because that didn't seem like a priority. But actually, we had very low numbers, and activation was crucial in monetary value, as we said, because yeah, you get the same. I mean, for those not particularly acquainted with the metrics, we were measuring the number of users that once landed on our product page would not only sign up but actually activate the product with some meaningful actions that would be a testament that, yes, they comprehend the value that they get from the product and they would be willing to pay in future. So that's tremendously important for most products, but we didn't really look at that at first. And at some point we recognized that there was this huge dropout. Yeah, we just simply used a funnel tool on Mixpan, and we recognized that we really had a dropout at some point, and it wasn't where we expected to be. It was yeah, right after the sign up, in a moment that we perceived to be very low friction. It just showed that, yeah, no, it wasn't. And yeah, by a couple of interviews, by a couple of, yeah, user chats, we understood that simply the product value was not clear enough for them. So yeah, they signed up because the product idea, yeah, made sense for them. They I mean, it got their curiosity, but it wasn't clear enough to yeah, get the skin in the game and activate their account. And again, that had a tremendous impact on the company. What we did, yes, we designed a set of dashboards for the inner circle of the product. So we sat down and decided a few metrics that we really cared about. We iterated a few times over some changes in the product. We made the product value much clearer to the users, but we also brought that kind of understanding to a broader level in the organization by reducing the complexity, of course. So we had, let's say, a couple of dashboards just for us and one chart for executives. But from that chart, it was really clear what we were working towards in terms of goal, and it was very clear once we achieved that goal, we got like almost 4 times the activation rate with the same marketing spend. It was very clear the amount of success that we got in the end. So there was no misunderstanding on that subject. And I found that format with broader and more fine grade definition for the inner circle and very more coarse grade for the executives to be working in those kind of organizations. And again, as you said, we shared our journey all across the way. So it was clear when we failed, and we did fail a few sprints to improve on that metric. Okay, so before we wrap up, I would like to get a story from you because I'm particularly interested, and you mentioned it a few times, but it's very, I mean, I get very curious about how an analytics company uses analytics to drive their own roadmaps. Could you share some tips, tricks that you found to be working in your own organization?
Yeah, sure. So we kind of do everything that I've already talked about, which is, we use usage data on what our customers are using and not using, how they're converting, where they're coming from, what makes users retain and what doesn't. But we do have a combination of quantitative data and direct feedback, not only in my role, working with customers and speaking with customers about what they would like Mixpanel to do, but you can actually submit feedback directly to our product team. So you can, ask for new features, you can ask questions about how things work, and I would like to see these sorts of things as well. And every piece of feedback that gets logged, either by someone in our support team or one a customer directly, goes directly into a Slack channel, and then it gets triaged by one of our teams. So is this something that we're working on already? Is this something that maybe we haven't thought of? Or is this something that isn't a priority for us for now? It usually falls into one of those areas. And then not only is it logged against the person who submitted it, but then also, the organization, who they are, what their contract value is worth with us and things like that. So that means that we can see how many people are asking for the same thing. Is this something that we've been thinking about for a while, but now we want to develop it because now suddenly lots of people are asking for it, and so then we can do that as well. And then when we release the feature, we can say, here's the users who are asking for it, so we can go to them and we can collect qualitative feedback about the feature. Is it released in the way that they expected? Does it do what they need? Does it still need to go further? And then we can still collect the quantitative feedback on it as well. So are people using it even though they asked for it? Has it improved what we wanted? Has it made our product easier and better for people to use? And then, as I said, we measure that all the way through. Everyone can take a look at the metrics that it's linked to and see whether it's working or not. So that's what we do.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, because I mean, we mentioned these as well. I mean, before joining the live offline, and there's this, I guess, there's this friction to do it perfectly, and you imagine that to be far more complicated than it is. You really need to sit down, track what you care about, and iterate all over. So I think it's refreshing and also comforting to know that an analytics company basically does what we're discussing. It's not rocket science. You do need to do it the right way, and there's a lot of support that you can get, but really you just need to sit down, track what you, decide what you need to track because you care about that, and iterate over and over and over until you reach the success you're looking for. We got a few minutes still, so one bonus topic that I would like to get your opinion on. We're experiencing exciting times, I would say, with the rise of AI and especially generative AI in particular, and that seems to be a shifter for most industries. How would you see generative AI impacting this space? So how would you see generative AI impacting the product analytics space?
Sure. I think it is. I think it is pretty exciting, and I think you can already see, the trends of software tools, summarizing notes, collecting feedback, giving ideas on specific insights, maybe even, breaking down reports and finding why users are doing certain things, so you kind of don't have to go off and investigate things. I think the biggest thing is going to be actually bridging the gap between, I mentioned earlier that you have people who are, maybe not as technical, and I class myself as one of these people who won't be able to run a script on our database and pull something out and then use a data science modeling tool. But you can ask, you can ask a GPT to do that for you, or what should I be looking at in order to run these things. So I think that's where it's probably going to be, really exciting. So you're going to have a huge number of people who you can say, give me some examples of metrics that I need to build, give me some examples of reports that I should be looking at, give me some examples of, statistical queries and significance tests that I need to be running on my data, and then I can do that myself. So I'd mentioned earlier about freeing up time for data scientists and engineers, but I think maybe it's going to be the case that to an extent you'll be able to kind of do some of that yourself, because you can, run that and debug stuff and work stuff out. So yeah, I think it's going to be really exciting regardless of what happens, but I think that's what I've seen so far, so we'll see.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. I mean, coming from engineering, I've seen what Microsoft and other vendors as well are doing with Copilot, for example. So you get this Copilot feeling of a generative AI, and I would really love to see that in the product management space. So I don't just track my analytics and draw reports, but I really chat with my product and I try to understand, and maybe I get insights, and why not? Maybe I get proposed some actions that I can take on my roadmaps to improve on what I'm measuring. There's all sort of use cases that can be done, and I'm really excited to see what's gonna happen in a few years.
Yeah,
Things are moving, definitely way too fast. Yeah,
I think so.
yeah. Okay, let's wrap it up.
Cool.
As a closing remark, Mark, I don't know if you can share a single suggestion to a product manager who wants to improve is their comprehension of users and improve on the organization. What would that be?
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier, but I truly believe it's start with the questions that you want to answer. So what do you want to know about your users, your product, and then go from there. Because then you will see the data that you need to collect, the sources of data. So is it product analytics? Is it acquisition? Is it, attribution, whatever? But it will not just show you that. It will potentially show you where you have gaps. It will show you the tools you need. And then those questions then build into the KPIs and the metrics. And I guess the second thing is, I know you only asked for one, but I'll give you two. It's just start with something.
Fair.
Something is better than nothing. And iterate on what you are doing, because ultimately you will be measuring against yourself. So don't worry about, industry benchmarking if you just don't have it. So start measuring, start improving on what you've got, and go from there. And that's it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Mark. And thanks everybody who joined us on this live chat. Again, I'm Simone. At Xstream, we help scale-ups and corporates build, design, and scale their digital products and AI solutions. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I would love to have a chat with you. Have a nice evening.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Thanks, Simone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Matt. Bye-bye.